Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a night of spine-tingling terror. Tonight, we journey deep into the heart of the wilderness to share some of the most horrifying camping tales ever told. Prepare yourself for a night of fear and suspense as we uncover the dark secrets lurking in the shadows. So pitch your tents, gather close, and let the nightmares begin. When I was younger, my parents would explore abandoned towns and mines as a hobby, and I would often be dragged along. However, when I started college, I stopped going with them. During the times I did accompany them, I encountered many things that made me feel uneasy. As a skeptic, I usually assumed it was just the atmosphere getting to me. But there was one experience I can't explain. For context, I live in Arizona, and most of our explorations were in the northern part of the state. There are many dying or dead towns and long-abandoned mines in that area. I can't remember the exact location of this particular encounter, but my parents decided to visit it after seeing it featured on a paranormal investigation show. They aren't paranormal investigators themselves, but they enjoy visiting and photographing creepy and supposedly haunted locations, which often have truly haunting imagery. Getting to this mine was more difficult than we expected. The road was so rough that we had to park and walk a mile or two to reach it. Apparently, a few years earlier, some kids had gone exploring at the mine and had gone missing. It was assumed they had fallen into one of the open shafts, which looked like bottomless pits. I felt incredibly uncomfortable there. I'm not a violent person, but a voice in the back of my mind kept urging me to push my stepmom into the mine shaft as she stood with her back to me, trying to take pictures down it. No matter how much I tried to shake off the idea, I couldn't help but feel compelled to push her. Once she stepped away from the shaft, the thought disappeared, and I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I've heard that morbid thoughts aren't uncommon around ledges, but this felt different. After my stepmom finished taking pictures, she went to photograph other areas while my father and I walked down a path to see if there was anything of interest. As we came around a bend, we saw a man who looked to be in his mid-20s, dressed in old-fashioned mining gear. He waved at us and walked off the path toward an empty clearing, where I assumed there were more open shafts. I've tried to come up with explanations for who this man could have been, but nothing adds up. The mine was not operational, so there shouldn't have been anyone in mining gear. It didn't seem like a practical joke either, as we saw no vehicles on the way up the rugged road, and we visited the place at least 6 months after it was featured on the TV show. Finding the mine itself was challenging, requiring us to ask locals for directions because Google wasn't helpful. It's been 7 years, and I still get chills thinking about it. I am an avid urban explorer, and in December, a friend and I drove to a location about 45 minutes away from home, in a small town in Pennsylvania. To reach the abandoned and crumbling house, we had to drive on a one-lane road through a forest. Upon entering the road, we noticed a dead deer lying on the side, which isn't uncommon, but it would become significant later. As we continued, my friend's GPS malfunctioned, telling us to return to the route even though we were already on it. The arrow was pointing in the opposite direction, away from the forest. Despite this, we kept driving and eventually turned into a parking lot, which had only a few cars. There was a walking trail in the forest that people used for biking and running. We went to an old water tower, took some pictures, and then decided to walk on the trail. Both of us felt uneasy, as if there was a secret that everyone else on the path knew, except for us. We were the only ones walking when we heard a bike bell behind us. Turning around, we saw a woman on a bike who then stopped to tie her shoe. My friend pointed out that her bike had no bell, so we had no idea where the sound came from. Although there were only about 4 cars in the parking lot, we ended up passing over 30 people, all of whom stared at us without breaking eye contact. My friend noticed a boulder with water trickling down it, but there was no visible source or crack, It just started from the middle of the rock. It was odd. Continuing down the trail, I spotted a tall black figure standing far off by the trees. It looked like a man, but I couldn't make out any clothes or a face. As we stared, we heard a loud snapping noise behind us, like a tree branch breaking. We quickly turned around but saw no sticks or branches on the ground. The figure was gone, all within about 5 seconds. The entire time, we felt increasingly drowsy, so we decided to head back to the car. By then, there was no one else around, and the parking lot was empty. Driving back through the forest road, we noticed that the deer was now entirely bones, a completely clean skeleton with no fur or blood, only the head still attached. It seemed impossible for any animal to have eaten or skinned it so quickly and thoroughly. Freaked out, we just wanted to get home. Then, the car's trunk suddenly opened. There's a specific button that has to be pressed to open it, but my friend's hands weren't near it. She got out to close the trunk, and all the car doors clicked and locked on their own, except for my passenger door, which remained unlocked. We had cell service, but her GPS didn't start working again until we left the town. I don't know what happened, but it felt like something in that place wanted us gone. Every time we pointed out something strange, something else would distract us from examining it closely. This experience still makes me uneasy, and sometimes I dream about it, with the word harvest recurring in the dreams. A few minutes ago, I looked up the coordinates of the place because I had them saved on my phone but couldn't remember the address. I found that the first search result was about abandoned paper mills to be demolished on Friday. There was no talk of demolishing the place a month ago. A few years ago, my friend and I decided to investigate a nearby abandoned factory that had suffered a fire many years ago. We geared up with everything we needed to ensure our safety. Our plan was to enter the building through a shattered glass window at the back of the factory. The first time we pulled into the parking lot, my friend mentioned feeling uneasy, so I drove away. As we turned down a road, we saw a shadowy figure with no discernible features walking along the side of the building. The way he walked suggested he was injured. I turned the car around, and he appeared closer this time. We kept our eyes on him as we turned to leave again, but suddenly he was gone. We decided to leave immediately and find a new location. As we drove, my friend became silent and unresponsive. She started speaking in a monotone voice, staring straight ahead, mentioning that someone had hung themselves at one location, someone had burnt to death at another, and someone had been shot at a different place. Despite my attempts to converse with her, she remained unresponsive. We left the city and pulled into a Walmart parking lot. Suddenly, she snapped out of it, asking where we were, what time it was, and why we were there. She had no recollection of anything she had said or any location we had visited. I then showed her a half-hour recording I had taken on my old cell phone, and she was shocked and insisted on leaving immediately. When I got home, I researched all the deaths she had mentioned, and they all matched up with the locations we had passed. Today, my two friends and I decided to go up the mountain behind my house to an abandoned mine to play airsoft. We had a bunch of airsoft rifles with us. It was foggy and drizzling, but we didn't think much of it. Around 4:50 p.m, we started to leave. By this time, it was almost dark, and a very heavy fog had set in around us. We were just messing around by the old abandoned bucket crane when my friend Connor said he saw a figure looming towards us in the fog. We thought it might have been a cop or some crackhead, so we naturally started hustling to leave. But the figure seemed off. It looked big and burly and was moving towards us at a relatively quick pace. I should mention that the fire siren from the neighboring town started going off, and the forest went dead quiet. Connor yelled out to it but got no response. I swear I saw a dog-like creature, while my friend said he saw a person. We took off down the old gravel road. ducking into the woods down a 10 or 12-foot hill to get out of sight. We got about 500 feet away from the road when we stopped to see if we were being followed. I saw a figure seemingly duck behind a tree at my 11 o'clock. My friend said things were moving at my 1 o'clock, and they heard a wailing scream, while I heard a dog's bark. We slowly started back and eventually found an ATV trail, which led us to a path down to the street. We sprinted down the path and eventually hit the road. My friend said it was following us to the road. Once we were a block away, through the fog and in the middle of the road, I saw the dog sitting and looking at us. But my friends claimed to have seen a person again. My question is, what the heck was that? A skinwalker, perhaps? We live in eastern Pennsylvania, so I think that's unlikely. Any suggestions as to what it could be would be appreciated. This happened 5 years ago when my friends and I were about 15. We used to sneak out every weekend and had older friends in high school who would drive us places. On this particular occasion, we decided to check out an abandoned 8th-floor hospital about 10 minutes away from our city. It was 8 a.m., during one of the worst winters in Michigan in the past 12 years, with temperatures at least -15 with the wind chill, because the hospital was less than 200 feet from the Detroit River. Trying not to draw attention, we jumped a 6-foot brick wall and landed in a courtyard with about 5 feet of unshelled snow. We trudged through it to the only accessible entrance, a back door with a staircase leading up and down to the basement. Every other door was chained or barricaded. As soon as we entered, we saw satanic worship symbols on the walls in red spray paint and a mutilated animal, possibly a small dog. Disgusted and horrified, 2 of my friends went down to the basement while the other 2 and I went upstairs. We all kept seeing silhouettes moving across the hallway in front of us from a distance, but we brushed it off initially. Then, a medical desk tipped over in a room down the hall from us, sending items flying into the hallway. We ran, terrified and unsure if it was a bomb or something supernatural. Meanwhile, my other 2 friends in the basement found a room storing hospital beds and swore something was thrown at them. They were certain they found the morgue and felt compelled to check it out. As we moved down the stairs, I kept hearing faint singing, like a little girl. I thought it was my friend behind me being a smartass and told him to stop. He replied that he thought it was me. We stopped in unison and heard what sounded like a little girl humming a song, just a few flights of stairs above us. We all panicked, ran out of the building, hopped the wall, and left. Since then, we've tried to return, but the increased police patrols in the area have made it too risky. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed tonight's spine-chilling camping tales. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to bring you more heart-pounding horror stories soon. Stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, keep the campfire burning. Like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe the channel.